My second book, Anatomy of a Disappearance, is not set in Libya. It's set actually in Egypt mostly, and also Switzerland and a bit of England as well. Although it has nothing to do with Libya, the characters aren't Libyan at all. It is to do with, there are some shared themes with the first book, and they're largely to do with these ideas that I talked about before, memory and identity. And I think what I will do is I will read, again, a little bit from the beginning, and then I will jump and read a couple of shorter passages deeper into the book. How does that sound? Sounds good? All right. There are times when my father's absence is as heavy as a child sitting on my chest. Other times I can barely recall the exact features of his face and must bring out the photographs I keep in an old envelope in the drawer of my bedside table. There has not been a day since his sudden and mysterious vanishing that I have not been searching for him, looking in the most unlikely places. Everything and everyone, existence itself, has become an evocation, a possibility for resemblance. Perhaps this is what is meant by that brief and now almost archaic word, elegy. I do not see him in the mirror, but feel him adjusting as if he were twisting within a shirt that nearly fits. My father has always been intimately mysterious, even when he was present. I can almost imagine how it might have been coming to him as an equal, as a friend, but not quite. My father disappeared in 1972 at the beginning of my school Christmas holiday when I was 14. Mona and I were staying at the Montreau Palace, taking breakfast, I with my large glass of bright orange juice, and she with her steaming black tea, on the terrace overlooking the steel blue surface of Lake Geneva, at the other end of which, beyond the hills and the bending waters, lay the now vacant city of Geneva. I was watching the silent paragliders hover above the still lake, and she was paging through Les Tribunes de Genève when suddenly her hand rose to her mouth and trembled. A few minutes later, we were aboard a train, hardly speaking, passing the newspaper back and forth. We collected from the police station the few belongings that were left on the bedside table. When I unsealed the small plastic bag, along with the tobacco and the lighter flint, I smelled him. That same watch is now wrapped around my wrist, and even today, after all these years, when I press the underside of the leather strap against my nostrils, I can detect a whiff of him. I wonder now, how different my story would have been were Mona's hands unbeautiful, her fingertips coarse. I still, all of these years later, hear the same childish persistence, I saw her first, which bounced like a devil on my tongue whenever I caught one of Father's claiming gestures, his fingers sinking into her hair, his hand landing on her skirted thigh with the absent-mindedness of a man touching his earlobe in mid-sentence. He had taken to the Western habit of holding hands, kissing, embracing in public, but he could not fool me. Like a bad actor, he seemed unsure of his steps. Whenever he would catch me watching him, he would look away and I swear I could see color in his cheeks. A dark tenderness rises in me now as I think how hard he had tried, how I yearn still for an easy sympathy with my father. Our relationship lacked what I have always believed possible, given time, and perhaps after I had become a man, after he had seen me become a father, a kind of emotional eloquence and ease. But now the distances that had then governed our interactions and cut a quiet gap between us continue to shape him in my thoughts. It is true, I did see Mona first. She was sitting on the ceramic tiles that surrounded the rectangular swimming pool of the Magda Marina, looking at the underside of her foot. The tiles were decorated in a pattern that many years later, on a trip to Granada, I learnt was a factory copy of a wall mosaic at the Alhambra. When I saw the original, I ran my fingertips over the mosaic and let my mind return to that distant summer's day of 1971 in Alexandria when I was 12. Her hair was tied sensibly in a ponytail, and she had on an outrageously bright yellow swimsuit that made her skin seem darker, her age younger. For a moment, I thought her a girl. For a moment, the yellow strap running across her back brought to mind the yellow hospital bracelet that had been bound round my mother's wrist. The light shimmered blue and weakly off the water and onto Muna's body. "This bit of skin is Arab, this from your English mother," I would later come to tease her. She was pulling her ankle, arching her neck, the ridge of her spine pressing against the yellow strap. Thinking back on it now, I'm envious of the confidence with which I had approached her, as if I were crossing the road to the aid of a turtle on its back. Such natural self-assuredness has since eluded me, whereas father managed to shake off the cloak of shyness. Over the years, mine only got heavier. I sat cross-legged beside her on the tiles and, without asking permission, placed the complaining foot on my lap. I proceeded to inspect each toe. She did not resist. Then, embedded in the soft underside of one toe, I found it, a brown speck of a thorn fading into the pink flesh. "Last week," I told her, turning her foot in order to gain a better angle, "the same thing happened to me. It drove me crazy the whole day until I couldn't stand it any longer. And just before going to bed, I pulled it out." I captured the thorn between two fingernails. She flinched, but I did not draw back. "Just like that," I said, and held it on the tip of my forefinger to show her. Our heads were so close now that I could feel a strand of her hair touch my temple. "Thank you," she said in an angular Arabic. I could see now that her shoulders had eased. "What is your name?" It was an English accent, I was sure. She ran her hand down my cheek, then held my chin and gazed at me. She had inconstant eyes, brown, green, and silver all at once. "Nouri," I finally said, pulling away. "Nouri al-Alfi." "Pleasure to meet you, Nouri al-Alfi," she said, and smiled a smile I could not understand. I walked back to where father was sunbathing. Now he had his broad chest propped up on his elbows. "Who is she?" he asked, his eyes on her. I thought of running back to ask her name, but she stood up, slid two fingers beneath the bottom of the swimsuit, and stretched the fabric around her buttocks. The pattern of the ceramic tiles was faintly imprinted on the underside of one thigh. She turned towards us. I wondered if she was looking at me or at father, or at us both together, perhaps. Then she went to sit at a table where a glass of lemonade had been waiting. Father reclined, his elbow red with pressure, and closed his eyes. Under a perfectly cropped mustache, his lips stretched into a precise smile, knowing, ironic, as if he was satisfied at his own intelligence, at having figured out a riddle in half the time. She looked our way again, lit a cigarette, then pretended to be looking elsewhere. Finally, she closed her eyes at the sun. I watched her without restraint now. I wanted to wear her as you would a piece of clothing, to fold into her ribs, be a stone in her mouth. I made as if I were walking around the pool to watch her from all angles. Suddenly she opened her eyes, looked at me, unsurprised, unmoving. She came to the pool's edge, dipped one foot in the water, then the other, and tiptoed away. I watched the trail of wet prints evaporate. The glass of lemonade was still there, patient and full. One of the sweating waiters, dressed in black bow tie and waistcoat, took it away. I regretted not beating him to it. How wonderful it would have been to drink something intended for her. I found father turned on his stomach. the wood slats of the sun lounger marked red across his back. And this relationship, this complicated relationship between Nouri and his father and Muna, the stepmother, plays itself out throughout the book and becomes a sort of exercise in longing for Nouri for his father through the stepmother. And this scene I will read now, a very short scene, takes place shortly before something incredibly dramatic happens in the book, which is the disappearance of the father. It shames me to admit that even the tragedy that followed did not corrupt the memory of those 3 days spent in Montreux alone with Muna. If anything, and perhaps exactly because of what happened next, it glimmers still in my mind with the vividness of a dark jewel. We took long walks by the lake, excursions punctuated by stops at cafes for tea, cake, and ice cream. I was almost too willing to hold her coat as she slipped her bare arms into the black satin lining. She liked fur coats because they allowed her to continue wearing her favorite sleeveless-fitted black blouses underneath. "Where is your new coat?" I asked. "I'm saving it for when Kamal, your father, is here." My 27-year-old stepmother looked younger than her years, and I, even then, gave the impression that I was older. Few of the 14 years that separated us would have been clear to a stranger. Once, in a busy cafe, aware of the attention of those at the table beside us, I leaned across, found a deviant strand of hair and tucked it behind her ear. She pulled back. I tried to imagine the questions our intimacy provoked. Did they think her a careless adulteress occupying herself with a young lover? And when we left, I took pleasure too from the envious, congratulatory looks I received from boys my age who walked in small groups by the lake. A scrupulous observer would have, of course, noticed the awkward nervousness her beauty caused in me. But my deliberate and shameful self-delusion, which she always found a way to encourage, persisted. She slipped her arm through mine, marrying her shoulders to my back, so I was slightly in front, like an officer leading the way. After a few paces, she let go and drifted ahead, looking at the water, no doubt wondering why father had not telephoned. Her hair moved slightly against the afternoon breeze.